Hi, my name is Connor. I'm 22 years old, and I live in Austin, Texas. I'm a university student studying business administration, but there's something about me that might surprise you. I've struggled with English, even though I've been learning it for years. And not just speaking English, but thinking in English. You might wonder, Emma, aren't you in the US? Don't you speak English every day? Yes, I do. But speaking English and thinking in English are two very different things. Let me tell you my story. I grew up in a bilingual household. My parents are originally from Mexico, so Spanish was the first language I learned. At home, we spoke mostly Spanish, and even though I learned English in school, I always translated everything in my head before I spoke. If someone asked me, "How was your weekend?" my brain would first think in Spanish. Then I would translate it into English and say, "My weekend was good." It might seem like a small thing, but this habit made my English slow. Conversations felt exhausting. I always needed a few extra seconds to respond, and sometimes, by the time I was ready to say something, the topic had already changed. I realized that this habit was holding me back. If I wanted to speak fluently, I had to stop thinking in Spanish. I had to start thinking in English. But the first realization. The first time I noticed this problem was in my college classes. My professor would ask a question, and my classmates would answer quickly. I, on the other hand, would sit there translating in my head. I understood the question, but by the time I was ready to answer, someone else had already spoken. One day, my professor asked me a direct question in class. I panicked. I knew the answer, but my brain was busy translating. I could feel the eyes of my classmates on me. After a long pause, I finally answered. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't natural either. After class, my friend Mia noticed my frustration. "Emma, you know English. What's stopping you?" she asked. "I always think in Spanish first," I admitted. She laughed. "That's your problem. You need to stop translating and start thinking in English." She was right. But how? Step 1. Surrounding myself with English. The first thing I did was change my environment. Even though I lived in the US, I realized I was still living in Spanish. My phone was in Spanish, my Netflix shows were mostly in Spanish, and even my grocery lists were in Spanish. So, I made a decision. I would switch everything to English. I changed my phone settings. I started watching shows in English without subtitles. I listened to English podcasts. I even set reminders in English on my phone. It felt strange at first, but my brain slowly started adjusting. Step 2. Speaking to myself in English. One day, I was walking home from class and I decided to talk to myself in English, not out loud. I didn't want people to think I was crazy, but in my head. I started narrating my day. Instead of thinking, "Voy a hacer mi tarea cuando llegue a casa," I forced myself to think, "I'm going to do my homework when I get home." At first, I had to concentrate, but after a few days, it became easier. My brain started processing things in English naturally. Step 3. Thinking in simple sentences. Another problem I faced was that my Spanish thoughts were too complicated. I would try to translate them word for word, and it didn't always make sense in English. So, I started using simple English in my thoughts. For example, instead of thinking, espero que no llueva porque necesito ir a la tienda, I would think, I hope it doesn't rain later because I need to go to the store. Short, simple, director. Step 4. Describing what I see. One of the best exercises I did was describing things around me in English. When I was at a coffee shop, I would look around and think, the barista is making coffee. That man is reading a book. This coffee smells good. At first, it was slow, but over time, my brain started doing it automatically. Step 5. Talking without worrying about mistakes. One of the biggest things that slowed me down was my fear of making mistakes. Every time I spoke, I worried about my grammar. But then I remembered something my English professor told me. Native speakers make mistakes too. She was right. I had heard my American friends say things like, me and my friend went to the store, which isn't grammatically correct, but people still say it. I realized that fluency is more important than perfection. So, I started speaking without overthinking. If I made a mistake, I kept going. And something amazing happened. I became more confident. The turning point. A few months later, I had a big moment. I was in a group discussion in one of my classes. The professor asked a question, and before I even realized it, I answered without translating in my head. It was natural. It was automatic. The journey never stops. After that moment in class, I felt a new level of confidence. But the journey to thinking in English didn't stop there. I had to keep practicing, keep pushing myself, and keep challenging my mind. One of the biggest tests came when I had to give a presentation in front of my entire class. Public speaking is scary for most people, but for me, it was even harder. My brain was still adjusting, and I was afraid that, under pressure, I might go back to translating in my head. So, I prepared differently this time. Instead of writing my speech in Spanish and then translating it, I forced myself to write everything directly in English. I practiced out loud, recorded myself speaking, and listened back. On the day of the presentation, I was nervous, but something incredible happened. When I stood in front of the class, I started speaking without thinking about Spanish at all. The words just came naturally. I wasn't just speaking English, I was thinking in English, without fear, without hesitation. That moment made me realize that learning a language is not just about words and grammar, it's about changing the way you think. Overcoming challenges. Of course, there were still challenges. Sometimes, when I was tired, my brain wanted to go back to Spanish, and there were moments when I still felt stuck on certain words. But instead of getting frustrated, I reminded myself, this is normal. I started keeping a small notebook where I wrote down words or phrases that I struggled with. Every night before bed, I would review them. Little by little, those words became part of my natural thoughts. Another challenge was speaking with native speakers who talked too fast. At first, I felt overwhelmed, but I developed a strategy. Instead of trying to understand every single word, I focused on the context. For example, if someone said, "Hey, want to grab a bite?" I didn't stop to think, what does grab a bite mean exactly? Instead, I understood from the situation that they were inviting me to eat. This mindset helped me stop overanalyzing and just go with the flow. The moment I knew I had changed. A few months after my journey started, something funny happened. I was walking through campus, texting my friend, when I suddenly realized I had written the whole message in English without even thinking about Spanish. I stopped for a second. I wasn't translating. I wasn't hesitating. My brain had fully switched to English. That was the moment I knew I had finally trained my mind to think in English. Thinking in English isn't about being perfect. It's about making English a natural part of your life. If you're struggling right now, don't worry. It takes time, but it's possible. Just remember, stop translating in your head. Surround yourself with English every day. Talk to yourself in English. Use simple sentences and grow from there. Accept that mistakes are part of learning. If you keep practicing, one day you'll realize that your brain has made the switch, just like mine did. The power of patience and persistence. After I realized my brain had started thinking in English, I felt proud. But I also knew that this was just the beginning. Learning a language is not something you do once and then stop. It's a continuous journey. Even after making so much progress, I still had moments when my mind would switch back to Spanish, especially when I was tired or stressed. At first, I was frustrated. Why am I still thinking in Spanish sometimes? But then I reminded myself, this is normal. Our brains are naturally wired to go back to the language we are most comfortable with. That's why I had to be consistent. So, I created a daily routine to make sure I didn't lose my progress. My daily routine to keep thinking in English. Every day, I made sure to practice in small but effective ways. Morning routine in English. As soon as I woke up, I narrated my morning in English. I need to brush my teeth. I'll make some coffee. I have a class at 10 a.m. This set my brain in English mode for the day. Writing my thoughts. Before bed, I would write a short journal entry in English about my day. It didn't have to be perfect, but it helped me process my thoughts in English before sleeping. Speaking English, even when alone. Whenever I was alone, I practiced speaking out loud. If I was driving, I would talk about what I saw on the road. If I was cooking, I would say, "Now I'm cutting the onions. This smells amazing." English-only conversations. I told my friends and classmates that I wanted to practice more. So, even when I was with my Spanish-speaking friends, we challenged each other to speak only in English for at least 30 minutes. Using English to solve problems. If I was thinking about something stressful, like an assignment or an important decision, I forced myself to think through the problem in English. It helped me train my brain to handle even complex thoughts in English. These small steps made a huge difference. The first dream in English. One of the craziest moments in my journey was the first time I dreamed in English. I remember waking up feeling shocked. My entire dream had been in English. I had spoken in English, and even the people in my dream were speaking in English. That's when I knew my brain had truly adapted. It didn't mean that I would never think in Spanish again, but it showed me that my efforts were working. Helping others who struggle with the same problem. After going through this journey, I started noticing that many people around me were struggling with the same thing, especially international students at my university. One day, I met a girl named Sophia who had recently moved from Colombia. She was fluent in English, but she told me she still thought in Spanish all the time. I smiled and said, "I used to be exactly like you." I shared my story with her, and she was shocked. "But you sound so natural in English," she said. "Because I trained my brain," I told her. "You can do it too." She started following my daily routine, and after a few months, she told me, "Emma, I just realized I was thinking in English without even trying. That made me so happy because I knew how powerful this skill was." Over time, my daily routine of thinking in English evolved into something more profound, an integral part of who I was becoming. I began to notice that the language wasn't just a tool for conversation. It was reshaping my perspective on life. A new perspective. One brisk autumn morning, I found myself preparing for a group project meeting in one of my business classes. The room buzzed with excitement and ideas, and I felt ready to contribute in a way I hadn't before. During the brainstorming session, when others hesitated or fumbled for words, my thoughts flowed naturally in English. I blurted out, "What if we use digital storytelling to connect with our audience on a more personal level?" The suggestion wasn't rehearsed or meticulously translated. It was pure, spontaneous creativity. The group fell silent for a moment before erupting into discussion. In that instant, I realized that my inner voice, once burdened by constant translation, had become a powerful asset, testing my fluency. Soon after that pivotal meeting, an opportunity presented itself that would further test and refine my newfound fluency. I secured an internship at a thriving startup in Austin, a company known for its innovative approach and fast-paced environment. Walking into the office on my first day, I was both excited and nervous. I knew that, in the world of business, precision and quick thinking were essential, and I was determined to meet those expectations. The internship was a whirlwind of meetings, project deadlines, and impromptu brainstorming sessions. At one team meeting, while discussing strategies to revamp our marketing campaign, I encountered an unfamiliar business idiom. Instead of freezing up or mentally reverting to Spanish, I made a quiet promise to myself. I would ask for clarification later and learn from it. That evening, after a long day of absorbing new information, I sat at my desk researching the idiom. With each new term I learned, my confidence grew. I began to see that every challenge was an opportunity to enrich my vocabulary and deepen my understanding of the language. Campus life and growth. Beyond the office, my campus life provided endless chances to practice. I joined the English Language Club, where students from all over the world gathered to discuss literature, debate current events, and share their experiences learning English. These meetings became a highlight of my week. In the relaxed atmosphere of the club, I found that I could experiment with idiomatic expressions, ask questions without fear, and even laugh at my own mistakes. One evening, after a passionate debate about American literature, I sat on the campus lawn beneath a canopy of stars. I reflected on the years when I struggled to string together even a simple sentence. Now, not only was I fluent, but I was also able to articulate my opinions and feelings with ease. It was a moment of quiet triumph, a reminder that every small step along the way had led me to this place of confidence and clarity. Embracing duality. I also began to appreciate that thinking in English didn't mean abandoning my roots. Even as my mind increasingly operated in English, the rich tapestry of my cultural heritage remained with me. I still dreamed in Spanish sometimes, and on quiet days, I would catch myself switching effortlessly between the two languages. This duality wasn't a weakness. Rather, it was a strength that allowed me to see the world through multiple perspectives. I realized that being bilingual gave me a unique ability to connect with people from diverse backgrounds, and that versatility was something to be celebrated. A leadership challenge. At the office, during yet another busy week, I was tasked with leading a small project team. We had to develop a proposal for a new client, and I was responsible for organizing our ideas and ensuring that every team member felt heard. In that role, I found that my internal dialogue in English helped me structure my thoughts clearly and assertively. I started jotting down ideas on a whiteboard, explaining each point with clarity. When the client visited for a preliminary meeting, I confidently presented our proposal. The presentation flowed naturally, and I answered questions with a newfound ease that impressed not only my colleagues, but also the client. That day, I realized that thinking in English had become a cornerstone of my professional identity. Even as my confidence soared, there were moments when old habits crept in. Late at night, while studying for an exam or working on a challenging project, I sometimes found myself drifting into familiar Spanish expressions. In those instances, I'd pause and gently steer my thoughts back, reminding myself of all the progress I had made. I kept a small notebook in my backpack where I jotted down new phrases or expressions that I encountered during the day. Each note was a small victory, a tangible record of my ongoing journey. Reviewing those notes became a nightly ritual that reinforced my commitment to learning and adapting. Reflecting on my journey, I began to see that the transformation wasn't solely about mastering a language. It was about evolving as a person. The process taught me patience, resilience, and the courage to step out of my comfort zone. Every conversation, every meeting, every moment of self-doubt I overcame contributed to the mosaic of my personal growth. I learned that it wasn't about erasing my past, but about weaving it into a broader narrative that embraced both my heritage and my aspirations. Now, as I move forward in both my academic and professional life, I carry with me the confidence of a mind that has learned to think in English, a confidence that opens doors, fosters creativity, and builds bridges between cultures. I look back on my early struggles with gratitude because they set me on a path to discover the limitless possibilities of language and self-expression. In the quiet moments, when I find myself reflecting on the path I've traveled, I smile at the thought of all those little breakthroughs, each one a testament to perseverance and the transformative power of language. I know that there will always be new challenges ahead, new expressions to master, and new cultural nuances to understand. But now I embrace them with open arms, confident that my inner dialogue will continue to evolve, carrying me toward even greater horizons. My journey of thinking in English is a living story, one that continues with every new experience, every conversation, and every dream. As I forge ahead, I hope that my story inspires others to take that first brave step, to allow their thoughts to break free, and to discover the profound freedom that comes with truly thinking in a new language. One evening, as I walked home from my internship, I thought about how far I had come. The streets of Austin were alive with the hum of conversations, the scent of food trucks filling the air, and the distant sound of live music echoing from a nearby bar. It was a perfect representation of my own journey, vibrant, constantly changing, and full of new experiences. I stopped by a small cafe near my apartment to grab a coffee. While waiting in line, I overheard a group of international students struggling to order in English. Their words were hesitant, their accents thick with uncertainty. I saw a younger version of myself in them, nervous, afraid of making mistakes. Without thinking, I stepped forward and smiled at them. "Hey, are you guys new here?" I asked gently. They looked at me, a bit surprised but relieved that someone was speaking to them in a way that felt welcoming. One of the students, a girl with dark curly hair, nodded. "Yes, we just arrived last week. English is hard," she admitted with a small laugh. I smiled, understanding her completely. "I know exactly how you feel. I used to be just like you." Their eyes widened. "But you sound so natural," another student, a boy from Korea, said. "Trust me, it wasn't always this way," I assured them. "I struggled a lot, but I found ways to train my brain to think in English, and once I did that, everything became easier." They were curious, and as we waited for our drinks, I shared some of my experiences. I told them about my routine, how I narrated my day in English, how I challenged myself to think in English even when no one was around. They listened eagerly, nodding at each tip I gave them. When our drinks were ready, the girl, whose name was Anna, hesitated before saying, "Thank you for talking to us. It helps to know that someone else has been through this." I smiled warmly. "You're not alone. It just takes time, but one day you'll realize you're thinking in English without even trying." As I walked back to my apartment, I felt something deep inside me, something I hadn't fully recognized before. I had become the person I once wished for, the friend, the guide, the proof that it is possible to change the way you think. The unexpected test. A few months later, I was invited to a networking event for young professionals in Austin. It was an exciting opportunity to meet people in my field, but it was also a test of how far I had come. In the past, events like these would have terrified me. The thought of having to make small talk, introduce myself, and sound confident in English would have made me anxious. But this time, I walked into the event with my head held high. I introduced myself to different people, joined conversations effortlessly, and even cracked a joke or two. At one point, I met a senior manager from a well-known marketing firm. We talked about trends in digital media, and before I knew it, I was explaining my ideas with passion and confidence. He listened intently and then said, "Emma, you have great insight. Have you ever thought about applying for a position at our company?" For a moment, I was speechless. Was this really happening? I smiled and said, "I would love to." That night, as I walked home, I felt something power. Thinking in English wasn't just about language anymore. It had become a part of who I was. It had given me confidence, opportunities, and a way to connect with people I never would have met otherwise. In the months that followed, my world began to transform in ways I had never imagined. Every day became a blend of new challenges and small victories, each one a testament to how far I had come. I remember one evening, after a long day juggling classes, my internship, and community volunteering, I found myself sitting alone in the campus garden. The dusk painted the sky with hues of purple and orange as I watched a group of students laugh and share stories. In that quiet moment, I realized that thinking in English wasn't just about fluency. It had become a bridge to connect with people, ideas, and a world that was constantly evolving around me. That realization hit me hard when I was invited to a local cultural fair in Austin. The fair was a vibrant celebration of our diverse community, where food, music, and art from all corners of the globe came together. I was tasked with assisting at a booth that promoted bilingual education, a cause close to my heart. There, I worked alongside Carlos, a passionate educator from El Paso, and Jennifer, a dynamic community organizer who had dedicated her life to empowering immigrant families. Together, we engaged visitors in conversation, answered questions, and shared stories about our experiences with language and identity. One conversation in particular stood out. A nervous young man named Daniel, who had recently moved from Honduras, approached our booth. His eyes were filled with a mix of hope and anxiety as he explained in broken English that he wanted to improve his language skills to secure a better job. I recognized that familiar feeling of uncertainty from my own early days. I knelt beside him and said, "Daniel, every new word you learn is a step forward. I remember the fear I felt when I first tried to think in English, but every mistake made me stronger." His smile that day, shy yet determined, reminded me that every challenge was a chance to grow and that I, too, was growing with every passing moment. At the same time, my academic life was taking on new dimensions. In class discussions, I no longer hesitated or second-guessed my words. Instead, I contributed with clarity and conviction, often finding that my ability to think quickly in English gave me a unique perspective on complex problems. My professors noticed the difference too. Professor Jacobs, who had long been my mentor, once told me, "Emma, your journey has taught you that language is more than grammar or vocabulary. It's about expressing your truth." His words resonated deeply with me, reinforcing the idea that my bilingualism was not a hindrance, but a powerful tool that enriched every facet of my life. balancing these new responsibilities was not always easy. There were nights when the weight of expectations, academic deadlines, work projects, and community commitments seemed overwhelming. I often found solace in my journal, a quiet sanctuary where I could reflect on both my triumphs and my struggles. In the pages of that journal, I wrote about moments of doubt when my thoughts slipped back into Spanish, and about the fierce determination it took to steer myself back into English. Over time, I began to see these instances not as setbacks, but as natural parts of my learning process. They were reminders that growth often comes with moments of vulnerability. One crisp winter evening, as the campus lay under a blanket of soft snow, I attended a special event at the community center where I volunteered. The event was designed for new immigrants to practice English in a friendly, low-pressure environment. Among the attendees was Lucia, a bright and spirited woman from Peru, who struggled with confidence in her spoken English despite her wealth of ideas. I shared my own story with her, the countless hours of self-talk, the fears of mispronunciation, and the eventual breakthrough that taught me to embrace imperfection. Lucia's eyes lit up with a mix of relief and newfound determination. "Maybe," she said softly, "I can finally stop worrying so much and just speak." That simple exchange reinforced my belief that the power of language lies not in flawless delivery, but in the courage to express oneself authentically. As spring approached, life continued to offer both challenges and unexpected opportunities. A few weeks after the fair, I received an invitation to speak at a local panel discussion on bilingual education and cultural identity. The thought of addressing an audience comprising educators, students, and community leaders both excited and terrified me. I spent countless hours preparing, not only by refining my speech in English, but by ensuring that my words resonated with the heart of my experiences. On the day of the panel, as I stood before the crowd, I felt a rush of adrenaline mixed with calm confidence. I spoke about my journey, from a hesitant translator in my own mind to someone who now lived and breathed English every day. I talked about the struggles, the late nights of self-doubt, and the eventual realization that language is a living, evolving part of who we are. The applause that followed was not just for the words I had spoken, but for the journey I represented, a journey of persistence, self-discovery, and the transformative power of embracing a new way of thinking. That day, after the event, I took a long walk along the tree-lined streets of my neighborhood. The cool breeze whispered promises of change and growth. I thought about my parents, who had always spoken to me in Spanish, and how their love and support had laid the foundation for my success. I felt a deep sense of gratitude for both sides of my identity, the comfort of my native language and the bold adventure of thinking in English. In that balance, I had found a strength that allowed me to navigate the complexities of life with greater ease. Every experience, every conversation, and every moment of self-doubt had converged to create a mosaic of resilience and transformation. I knew that there would always be days when my thoughts slipped back into Spanish, days when the familiar rhythm of my native tongue would resurface. But I also understood that each of those moments was an integral part of my journey, a reminder of where I had come from and how far I had traveled. Today, as I continue to walk this path, I embrace every aspect of my bilingual identity. I no longer see thinking in English as a goal to be achieved, but as an ever-evolving process that enriches my perspective and connects me to a world of infinite possibilities. With every conversation, every new word learned, and every moment of shared understanding, I celebrate the unique blend of languages that shapes who I am. And so my story goes on, a journey of learning, of growing, and of daring to express the deepest parts of my soul in a language that once seemed so distant. It is a story that reminds me, and perhaps others, that true progress is not measured by the absence of mistakes, but by the willingness to keep moving forward, to keep embracing the beauty of expression, and to keep believing in the transformative power of language. In the following months, life unfolded in unexpected ways that deepened my connection with English and, more importantly, with myself. Every morning, as I sipped my coffee on the small balcony of my apartment in Austin, I would reflect on the new challenges the day might bring. I was no longer just a student navigating college classes or juggling an internship. My world had expanded to include mentoring, public speaking, and even creative projects that merged my personal experiences with my passion for language. One crisp April morning, I received an invitation to attend a regional conference on bilingual education and cultural identity in New York City. The invitation came from Karen Smith, a respected professor of linguistics, whom I had met during one of my university workshops. Karen had told me that she was compiling stories about language learning for an upcoming publication, and that my journey was one of the most inspiring examples she had encountered. The thought of sharing my story with a larger audience filled me with both excitement and nervous anticipation. When the day of the conference arrived, I found myself stepping into a grand auditorium, buzzing with the energy of educators, students, and professionals from across the country. The diversity in the room was palpable. People from every corner of the United States, all united by their passion for languages and cultural exchange. As I took my seat, I couldn't help but notice a mix of familiar and new faces. There was Mia, an old friend from college who had also embraced her bilingual roots, and several others whose eyes sparkled with the same determination that had once defined my own struggle. During one panel session, I was invited to speak about my experience of transitioning from a mind that constantly translated to one that thought directly in English. I took a deep breath and stepped up to the microphone. In that moment, I realized that all the late-night journal entries, the countless hours of self-talk in English, and the moments of doubt had led me to this very stage. I recounted how I had once hesitated in class, worried that every word had to be perfect, and how, over time, I learned to let go of the fear of mistakes. I shared practical tips, like narrating my day in English and jotting down challenging phrases that had helped me along the way. The response was overwhelming. After my talk, a young woman named Elena approached me, her eyes filled with gratitude as she whispered, "Hearing your story has given me hope. I've always felt trapped in my translations, but now I see that I can break free too. That conversation marked a turning point for me. It was a reminder that my journey wasn't just about language. It was about empowerment and connection. Over the next few weeks in New York, I met with educators, fellow students, and even professionals who were eager to learn how they could apply similar strategies in their own lives. I spent long afternoons in quiet coffee shops discussing innovative language programs and the power of immersive environments with people like Daniel, a tech entrepreneur who had struggled with language barriers in his own career, and Sophia, a community organizer from Boston with a passion for cultural inclusion. Back in Austin, the lessons I learned in New York began to ripple through every aspect of my life. I launched a small workshop series on thinking in English at my university. The sessions were intimate, held in a bright classroom lined with inspirational posters and a whiteboard filled with notes in neat handwriting. I invited students from various backgrounds: Anna, who had always hesitated to speak up in class; Ahmed, whose quiet brilliance shone through his written essays; and even Lucia, who had once doubted her ability to express herself in English. Together, we practiced speaking without fear, shared our personal challenges, and celebrated every small victory. One particularly memorable afternoon during one of our workshops, I introduced a simple exercise. I asked everyone to describe an object in the room, be it the old wooden desk or the potted plant in the corner, in as much detail as possible, solely in English. As each person took their turn, I watched how their confidence blossomed. The exercise wasn't just about vocabulary or grammar, it was about trusting their inner voice. When Anna described the desk with a mix of humor and poetic insight, the room burst into applause. That moment, like so many others, reminded me of the transformative power of thinking directly in a new language. Amid these professional and community endeavors, life continued to weave in moments of personal growth. I still found time to nurture my creative side, picking up a pen in the quiet hours of the night to write short stories and reflections. In one such story, I recounted the memory of a rainy afternoon when I sat by my window in Austin, the patter of rain against the glass mirroring the rhythm of my thoughts. In that solitude, I had a revelation. While English had become the language of my aspirations and public life, Spanish remained the language of my heart, a reminder of my heritage, my family, and the comforting cadence of my childhood. This duality wasn't a conflict. It was a harmonious blend that enriched my perspective. I began to incorporate both languages into my writing, crafting bilingual poems that celebrated the beauty of cultural intersections. One evening, as I strolled through a lively downtown street fair in Austin, I encountered a familiar scene. A group of new international students hesitating at a food stall, unsure how to order. I couldn't help but smile at the memory of my own early struggles. Approaching them gently, I struck up a conversation in English, offering to help. Their faces lit up with relief, and soon we were laughing and sharing stories about our first days in the United States. One of them, a bright-eyed student named Javier from Argentina, confided that hearing me speak so confidently made him believe that he, too, could overcome his linguistic fears. It was in these moments that I truly understood. My journey was not just about me. It was a shared experience, a ripple effect that could inspire countless others. As summer approached, I found myself reflecting on the winding road that had brought me to this point. Every challenge, every stumble, every breakthrough had taught me something invaluable. I remembered the sleepless nights spent correcting my internal translations, the anxiety before class discussions, and the small triumph of finally dreaming in English. More than just acquiring a new language, I had discovered a way to express my authentic self, unburdened by the constant need to convert my thoughts. I started envisioning a future where my bilingual abilities could pave the way for broader social impact. I began researching programs that supported immigrant youth in integrating into American society through language and storytelling. I dreamed of establishing a community center where students could come together to share their narratives, learn from each other, and celebrate the diverse threads that wove the fabric of our nation. In many ways, my journey of thinking in English was evolving into a mission, a commitment to empower others to find their voices, no matter the language they spoke. One crisp fall evening, as I walked along the tree-lined streets of Austin, the gentle rustle of leaves underfoot reminded me of the ever-changing seasons of life. I paused at a small park bench and took out my journal. With careful, deliberate strokes, I wrote down my thoughts, not just as a record of my progress, but as a beacon for those who might one day walk a similar path. I wrote about the importance of perseverance, the beauty of cultural duality, and the boundless potential that comes with embracing a new way of thinking. In that quiet moment, I felt a profound connection to everyone who had ever struggled to express themselves, regardless of the language. Today, my journey continues. With every new day, every conversation, and every story shared, I still face moments of self-doubt, when the old habits of translating silently creep in during times of stress. But now I see those moments for what they truly are. Reminders of a past that made me who I am, and stepping stones toward a future filled with endless possibilities. Looking back, I realized that learning to think in English was not merely a linguistic achievement. It was a journey of self-discovery, resilience, and connection. It taught me that language is more than a set of words. It is a living, breathing expression of our identities. As I continue to navigate the complexities of life as a bilingual woman in the United States, I carry with me the certainty that every challenge is an opportunity, every conversation a bridge, and every word a step toward a brighter, more inclusive future. Below is a comprehensive list of tips and tricks to help you start thinking in English. Each strategy is explained in detail to help you incorporate them into your daily life. 1. Immerse yourself in an English environment or what it means. Surround yourself with English in every part of your day. This doesn't just mean listening to music or watching movies. It's about making English the primary language you interact with. Oh, how to do it. Change your device settings. Set your phone, computer, and apps to English. Consume English media. Watch TV shows, movies, or YouTube channels in English. Listen to English podcasts and radio stations. Follow social media in English. Subscribe to English-speaking influencers, news outlets, or hobby groups. Oh, why it works. Constant exposure trains your brain to process information in English, gradually reducing the habit of translating from your native language. 2. Practice self-talk and internal narration of what it means. Instead of translating your thoughts from your native language, start narrating your day-to-day activities in English. Oh, how to do it. Daily narration. As you perform routine tasks like making breakfast or commuting, describe what you're doing in English in your head. For example, I'm boiling water for coffee, or I need to check my schedule for today. Verbal practice. Occasionally speak out loud to reinforce your thoughts in English. When you're alone, it might feel odd at first, but saying things aloud helps internalize the language. Why it works. Self-talk creates a direct link between your thoughts and English, bypassing the need for translation and making your speech more fluid and spontaneous. 3. Keep an English journal. What it means. Writing down your thoughts in English daily helps reinforce new vocabulary and sentence structures. How to do it. Daily entries. Dedicate a few minutes each day to write about your experiences, thoughts, or even reflections on what you learned. Reflect on progress. Look back at your earlier entries to see how far you've come and note areas for improvement. Why it works. Journaling in English forces you to form sentences directly, boosting your confidence in structuring ideas without the need to translate. 4. Read extensively in English. What it means. Regular reading exposes you to different writing styles, vocabulary, and grammatical structures. How to do it. Choose varied content. Mix up reading fiction, nonfiction, newspapers, blogs, or academic articles. Highlight and note new words. When you come across unfamiliar words, highlight them, look up their meanings, and try to use them in your writing or conversation. Why it works. Reading not only builds your vocabulary, but also helps you see the natural flow of English, which can then influence your own internal monologue. 5. Engage in active listening. What it means. Active listening involves focusing on how native speakers use English in different contexts. How to do it. Watch and listen. Use videos, podcasts, or audiobooks. Try to mimic the intonation, rhythm, and phrasing of the speakers. Shadowing technique. Listen to short segments and then try to repeat them word for word. This exercise helps train your ear and reinforces natural sentence structures. Why it works? Listening carefully helps your brain recognize natural patterns in spoken English, making it easier to think and speak in the language naturally. 6. Avoid over-translating. What it means. Stop converting every thought from your native language into English. Instead, learn to formulate thoughts directly in English. How to do it. Use simple sentences. Start with basic sentences to describe your thoughts. Gradually, you can add complexity as you become more comfortable. Set specific challenges. For example, Challenge yourself to think in English for a set period each day or during certain activities. Why it works. This practice trains your mind to work directly in English, reducing delays or pauses in conversation caused by mental translation. 7. Interact with native speakers. What it means. Engaging in real conversations with native speakers accelerates your learning and helps you pick up nuances that textbooks might miss. How to do it. Language exchange programs. Join local meetups or online language exchange communities. Participate in discussions. Whether in a classroom, community workshop, or online forum, engaging in English conversations will push you to think on your feet. Why it works. Real interactions force you to respond naturally in English, reinforcing your internal dialogue and boosting your confidence in using the language. 8. Utilize technology and language apps. What it means. Modern apps and online platforms can provide structured practice and interactive ways to engage with English. How to do it. Apps. Use language learning apps that focus on conversation and vocabulary building, such as Duolingo, Memrise, or Babbel. Voice recordings. Record yourself speaking and listen back to identify areas for improvement. Many apps also offer pronunciation practice with instant feedback. Why it works. Technology offers immediate practice and feedback, which helps you refine your thinking and speaking processes in English. 9. Create visual reminders. What it means. Visual cues can help reinforce your language learning journey by constantly exposing you to English. How to do it. Sticky notes. Place notes on everyday items, e.g., door, fridge, with their English names. Visual storyboards. Create a visual diary or mind map of your day-to-day activities in English. Why it works. Visual aids help cement the connection between objects and their English names, which over time leads to quicker recall without translating. 10. Join groups and workshops. What it means. Being part of a community that practices English can provide both motivation and a safe space to make mistakes. How to do it. Join a language club. Participate in local or online groups that focus on practicing English. Attend workshops. Look for workshops or seminars that focus on public speaking, creative writing, or conversational English. Why it works. The social element of learning makes the process more enjoyable and engaging. Peer feedback and shared experiences can inspire you to continue practicing. And time blocks. What it means. Establish specific times or areas where you commit solely to using English. This method creates a mental boundary that encourages your brain to operate in English without interference from your native language. How to do it. Time blocks. Decide on a daily period, like 30 minutes or an hour, during which you only think, speak, or write in English. Use this time to tackle routine tasks, self-talk, or even challenge yourself with creative writing. Physical zones. Set up a particular spot in your home, such as a desk or a reading nook, as your English zone. Place English books, magazines, and even sticky notes with English labels in that area. Digital immersion. Disable language options on your devices during these periods, forcing yourself to use English for online browsing, emails, or apps. Why it works. Creating clear boundaries helps your brain switch gears. Over time, these periods of immersion strengthen your ability to think in English naturally, even outside the designated zones. 5. Interactive technology and gamification. What it means. Leverage modern technology to add an interactive and fun element to your language learning. Gamified tools provide instant feedback and reward progress, keeping you motivated. How to do it. Language apps. Beyond basic vocabulary drills, apps like Anki for flashcards, Tandem, or HelloTalk for conversational practice can simulate real-life interactions and scenarios. Online games. Engage in English-based games, be it word puzzles, trivia, or interactive story apps that challenge you to think and respond quickly in English. Voice-activated assistants. Use Siri, Alexa, or Google Assistant to practice your English. Ask them questions, have short conversations, or even set daily challenges where you interact only in English. Why it works. Interactive platforms transform language practice into an engaging activity. They also help you overcome the fear of failure by creating a playful, low-pressure environment to experiment with new vocabulary and sentence structures. 6. Deliberate practice through creative writing. What it means. Writing creatively in English pushes your brain to form new connections and express ideas without the fallback of your native language. How to do it. Short stories and poems. Set a goal to write a short story or poem each week in English. Let your imagination run wild without worrying too much about perfect grammar initially. Focus on expression. Writing prompts. Use online writing prompts or language learning forums that provide daily or weekly challenges. Peer feedback. Share your work with peers or join online writing communities to receive constructive feedback. Revising your work in English helps refine your internal thought process. Why it works. Creative writing forces you to think in abstract terms and experiment with language, fostering a deeper and more flexible command of English that goes beyond everyday conversation. 7. Mindfulness and reflection in English. What it means. Combine mindfulness techniques with your language practice to create a reflective space where you're fully present and using English to process your thoughts and emotions. How to do it. Meditative journaling. Instead of merely recounting your day, reflect on your emotions, challenges, and triumphs, all in English. This can include guided meditations where you verbalize your inner state. Affirmations. Create a list of positive affirmations in English, e.g., I am confident in my ability to communicate in English. Why it works. Mindfulness techniques allow you to connect deeply with the language while cultivating a positive mindset, making learning more enjoyable and meaningful.